Hi, I'm Jesse Bifulco, host of the LifeCounsel podcast. Join me as I tell stories from my 25 years of experience as an estate planning and elder law attorney. I'm going to show you how you can keep more of your money in real estate and prevent family disruption using estate planning. As an estate planning lawyer, I help families avoid costly mistakes and conflicts. Estate planning is more than just wills and trusts. It's about taking stock and contemplating important life decisions. It's about family and legacy too. Welcome to LifeCounsel. Today you'll hear the tragic tale entitled, What Happened to Claire's Inheritance? Let's feel what it can be like in real life when a holographic will is used. Today we're diving into the nitty-gritty of making a last will and testament. We'll use Maine and Florida law to illustrate that different states have different rules. So, wherever you're located, you need to know the rules, or better yet, call an experienced estate planning lawyer. We've got some interesting differences and similarities to talk about, so let's get started. This episode features a short drama about holographic wills. Listen to the end to hear a bonus tip about proving or probating a last will, even if you cannot find the will witnesses. Okay, so today we're going to focus on a question we get often. Does a last will require witnesses to be valid and enforceable? A will that does not have witnesses is called a holographic will. Listen to the story of what happened to Claire's inheritance to feel how that can play out in real life. Claire moved to Florida after college. She'd been going back and forth from Tampa, Florida to Midcoast, Maine for years to visit her father at his house on the Penobscot Bay. Her father was on his own since her mom had died a few years before. During college and after she graduated and found a job, and then even after she married, she would spend as much time with him as she could. She was 7 months pregnant when she got the bad news. Her father, Clyde, had had a stroke. Claire's pregnancy was considered high risk, so she was advised not to travel. She was going to ignore that advice and go anyway when her Uncle Troy called and told her he'd help out. Uncle Troy said he could move in temporarily and look after her father. Claire was relieved. Claire canceled her flight and concentrated on making things ready for the birth of her new son. After Claire's son was born, she named him Clyde after her father. They called him Baby C for short. Claire could not travel immediately. She had to wait to go and see her father, but she called every day and got an update from Uncle Troy. When she finally felt it was safe to travel with Baby C, she called her Uncle Troy to tell him the news.
Uncle Troy, how's Dad?
Well, he is doing about as good as can be expected.
Can I talk to him? I'd like to tell him the news that I'm bringing his grandson to come see him.
He can't talk now. He's not doing so well.
Okay, well, I will be there on Friday.
I don't think that's a good idea. Things are a bit of a mess right now. He still can't talk very well, and I think he's mad at you.
I have to see him. It's been months.
Well, let me check with him and the doctors and get back to you.
The next day, Baby C came down with a high fever, so Claire postponed her visit. When he was feeling better, she called Uncle Troy again.
Uncle Troy, my baby was sick, but he's well enough to travel now. I'd like to come visit.
I know this isn't fair, but I asked your father, and he said he didn't want to see you.
What?
Yeah, well, he was upset that you haven't come in so many months, and he said to tell you not to come.
Let me talk to him.
I'll ask. No, he says he's certain he won't talk to you, and he doesn't want you to come.
Claire hung up the phone, upset, but determined. She booked a flight up the next week. Once it landed, she and Baby C drove straight to her father's house. It was great to be back home, despite the circumstances. The smell of pines and salt air in her father's wharf greeted her. When she got to the door, her Uncle Troy answered.
Claire, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but your father died over the weekend. He had another stroke, and this time it was fatal.
Where is he?
He's been cremated. I'm going to pick up the ashes tomorrow.
I'll go with you. Can you help me unload my things? I'll stay in my old bedroom.
I don't think that's a good idea. Your father wouldn't like it. And anyway, the place is a mess. There are pill bottles and an oxygen tank. It's not safe for a baby.
Confused and traumatized, Claire got back into the rental car and checked into a B&B nearby. She flew back to Florida with an urn and a promise from Uncle Troy that he would call her with the details. After 3 months went by and she didn't hear from Uncle Troy, she called him. When she called his number, the answering message said that the number was no longer in service. She called her Uncle Troy's mobile phone number and he picked up.
Uncle Troy, it's Claire. What's going on with Dad's estate?
I don't know, Claire. What do you mean?
Well, the house, Dad's stuff, his insurance money. Before I left for Florida the last time I saw him before the stroke, he told me everything was all in order. That if he should die, he made a will. He even showed me where he kept his insurance policies and the key to his safe deposit box.
I don't know about any of that. I'll look and get back to you.
After hanging up the phone, Claire didn't hear from her uncle, Troy, for 2 weeks. Finally, she called him.
Uncle Troy, you said you'd call me. What happened? Was the will where I said it was?
No, Claire. I didn't find the will you described. But I did find a handwritten will. It was typed out and signed by your father. I'm sorry to break this to you, Claire, but he left everything to me.
That's crazy.
I guess he was upset when you didn't come for months after his first stroke.
But he knew I was pregnant. He knew it was high risk.
So I talked to a lawyer, and he said that this counted as your father's will. And since it is newer than the old will, it is the only will. So I'm sorry, but I have to honor your father's wishes.
Then he hung up the phone. Okay, so now you've just watched the animation. So, does Claire inherit her father's estate? Or will her Uncle Troy get everything? This story is something that happens in real life all the time. In fact, just last week, my wife forwarded me a newspaper article about a similar story in the state of Maine. I'm going to put a link to that article in the bottom of this podcast episode. One of the themes of many of our episodes is calling out the difference between a will and a trust. In this story, Clyde had a will, but a trust, if drafted properly, could have protected him during the incapacity caused by his stroke. Let's answer the question posed at the beginning. Is a last will and testament valid, even if there are no witnesses? The answer is, it depends. It helps to understand the reason for the witnesses in the first place. In the Claire's inheritance story, having 2 witnesses would have been likely helpful for Claire. The witnesses could have been asked about Clyde's condition when he made his alleged last will. And that is the reason witnesses are usually required, to avoid fraudulent last wills. Having witnesses is not an absolute guarantee that the will was not the product of fraud, but it is a safeguard. But why then do some jurisdictions permit a will to go to probate, that is to be proved, without any witnesses? The reason is a party or a person making a will, they may be near death and not have time or the ability to get witnesses. I'm going to tell an interesting, quirky story about that in my podcast entitled Controlling from the Grave. But they may, whoever it is, they may not have a pen, or maybe they only have a pen and paper and no witnesses. That's the premise, at least, for permitting what is called a holographic will. A holographic will traditionally is meant a will in the willmaker's handwriting and signed at the end. That excludes the necessity of 2 witnesses. The safeguard against fraud in the case of a holographic will is supposed to be the handwriting. But what if the will is typed out? Many people have printers at home and have basically forgotten how to write. Or what if it's typed out and signed at the end? What if only part of it is typed? What if it was a last will done with all the formalities, but then the will maker, scratched in some handwritten changes, which he dated and then signed? You can see how things can get quite complicated. In the case of Claire's inheritance, I think Claire should hire a top-notch litigation attorney who specializes in will contests or probate litigation and go after her Uncle Troy. That lawyer would look closely at the facts and at the statute and case law to see what Claire's chances of success might be. Remember, different states have different laws about what constitutes a valid last will. In some states, such as Maine, a will in the handwriting of the will maker and signed by the will maker is a valid last will. However, in other states like Florida, holographic wills are not recognized. So what could Claire's father have done to avoid this? He could have made an estate plan with an estate planning attorney that protected his daughter's inheritance. Based on the story, it's obvious that Clyde wanted his only daughter to inherit his estate. However, as the old saying goes, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. Circumstances conspired against Claire, and now she has a lawsuit, and maybe she will never get to inherit her childhood home, Clyde's estate. Okay, so in the beginning I said that if you listen to the end, I'd reveal a tip that will help you probate a last will, even if you cannot find the witnesses. The tip is this. Most states recognize something called a self-proof affidavit. When I first started practice, when you probated a last will, you had to also have the testimony of the two witnesses who witnessed the will maker sign the will. This could be a challenge, especially if the will was signed many years before. Imagine the person who died made a will 20 years before. The lawyer's retired and no one knows where the two witnesses are. Probate requires that those two witnesses swear that it is the same document that they witnessed 20 years before. If you could not find those witnesses, it made it very difficult to probate the will. Then the law changed to allow for those witnesses to sign a sworn statement right after or at the same time as witnessing the will. Remember, it varies a little bit by state. This is called a self-proving will or a self-proof affidavit. That way, when the will's probated, you don't need to find the witnesses. You can simply submit the sworn statement instead of finding the witnesses. Most lawyers who make wills know this tip, but I still come across do-it-yourself or DIY last wills that do not have self-proof affidavits all the time. What's the moral of that story? I think you know what I'm going to say. Don't gamble on DIY when you die. Hire an experienced estate planning attorney in your state. We've got a really special episode coming next. It's for business owners making their estate plan. It's called How Not to Do Family-Owned Business Planning, or The Hidden Cost of Poor Succession Planning, or One Business, Three Kids. In it, I'll tell a story of a couple who own and run a successful family business. They have 3 children, they want to retire, and they need an estate plan. What should they do? Make sure you listen to find out. Thanks for listening. I'm Jesse Bifulco of the LifeCounsel podcast.